2021 Lexus RX 350. Lexus's best-selling model is now about 6 years into the product cycle of its 4th generation. Today, we're going to find out how well it's doing being so long in the tooth in its product cycle, and we're going to take a peek forward into what Lexus is also bringing next year with the 5th generation Lexus RX. I'm in this 2021 model right as Lexus has announced the 2022 models, and those are going to be hitting showrooms anytime soon. Well, with the production supply drying up, who knows when they're going to hit the showrooms. Anyways, this 2021 model has a special black line edition treatment, which the 2022s are getting their own black line edition as well. I have a video about that, but let's talk about this vehicle for 2021. It brought a whole new paint color to Lexus RX, and that is Grecian Water. It first debuted on the 2021 Lexus IS, and in the 2022 models, it is exclusive to the F Sports. And this is an F Sport package, but it doesn't have the dynamic handling package. Like, it doesn't have the adaptive variable suspension, for example, compared to some higher end offerings of this F Sport model. But besides the paint color, what has Lexus done to this special edition? Well, they've given it a black decal that goes on the bottom of the doors on each side of the car. I don't know how I would feel about it. I think it looks better without that black decal. So to me, it's not doing this still good looking RX any favors. Like I said, this RX came out as a 2016 model year, and man, the 2022s are right around the corner, and there's very little changes. Now, in 2020, there became a refresh. They redid the front end. They really didn't touch the back end unless you got the triple beam premium headlights, which this has. So what that did to the back tail lights is that upgraded them to the full LED tail lights with the new design, and they look good, but very few RXs have the upgraded tail lights because they only come with the upgraded triple beam headlights. Fog lights also come with these triple beams, but now for 2022 you can get them as a standalone option, so take that for what it's worth. Now on the interior, I feel like besides the paint color, that's where this feels a little bit more unique. Now these F Sport seats, they're comfortable. I wouldn't say they're as comfortable as the ESF Sports I was in last week. We have some blue stitching on here, blue stitching on the steering wheel and the shifter. I love that touch, and Lexus has done a good job giving this interior some special feelings for this Blackline edition. But despite that, we still have the scored aluminum on the doors and in the center here. And I would say after the 2020 model year, they brought the screen in here for more usability. They brought it forward a few more inches as a touchscreen now. You have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, but unfortunately it's not wireless until next year, and that will come out with a whole new Lexus interface. In the meantime, we have this touchscreen, which is too far out of my reach. I have to lean forward to be able to use it, so it's not very ergonomic, and I have to use the touchpad, which I'm not a big fan of the touchpad. I'm just used to it. I'm fluent in touchpad by this point in time. But strangely, and this has never bothered me before until now, is when you're in drive, the shifter is in front of the touchpad, so it kind of gets in your way if you want to adjust the volume. By the way, the Mark Levinson sound system in here is banging. I don't know, can I say that? Am I too white for that? Probably, but it's so good. I love the Mark Lev. I always crank them anytime I'm in a Lexus. But yeah, the ergonomics with the shifter is just awkward. And like I said, it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but in order to use it, you have to plug your phone in underneath the armrest here. Meanwhile, you have 2 quick charging ports up front that don't connect the data to the car, so you can't have your Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and fast charging through these ports. So they're almost useless unless you're plugging in like 4 devices up in your Lexus. But you also have rear plugins as well back here. So yeah, there's like 6 USBs in this RX. I guess that's a good, it's good to have too many. I'm not going to complain about having too many USBs, but unfortunately only a certain one in here uses Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. The interior overall is very comfortable. It's looking a little dated at this point just because I've seen it since 2016. And the steering wheel, even though it's comfortable, it doesn't feel quite as soft and enjoyable as the ESF Sports steering wheel. But we have this trackpad on here, or buttons. It's almost like a directional pad, and it's on the right-hand side of the steering wheel. Strangely, it only changes the information display on the left-hand side of the MID. So it's like this cross-action thing here. Well, while I could have had the directional pad on the left-hand side to control the MID on the left-hand side. And I don't know why Lexus would not just switch the directional pad over. Anyways, this has an F-Sport gauge, which is different compared to the normal RX. But even though it looks so much like the other F-Sport gauges, like on the ES, the IS, and the RC, where they slide back and forth, we don't have that sliding mechanism here on the RX, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Cargo capacity is great, and that's one of the biggest reasons Lexus just sells a ton of these things over like the ES, for example. Not only does this have all-wheel drive, but you can fold down the seats for great practicality, usability, versatility, tons of cargo space. But you have a trade-off. So you have more cargo space compared to something like the ES and with this crossover type vehicle, and you have higher ground clearance all-wheel drive, but it's a tad bit louder because of just the larger volume in here. So you're just going to hear more stuff in this vehicle compared to the ES, which is a smaller cabin, it's more insulated. And when I drove this up to Tampa and back, it was really quiet, really smooth on the highway, as you would expect. I was getting a decent amount, or a noticeable amount, of wind noise coming off the mirrors here, and that I felt was a little unfortunate. Underneath the hood of the RX is the same 3.5 liter V6, or roughly the same 3.5 liter V6 that we've had, I don't know, for 15 years in the RX. It produces 295 horsepower, an okay amount of torque. I want to say it's like 267 or something off the top of my head, and it's mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. 8-speed, it has gotten a little bit better over the years. I think they've given it some different tuning, different software updates, things like that to make this 8-speed a little bit better. It doesn't gear hunt as much, but it's still not my favorite transmission. I actually prefer like the Lexus 6-speed all-wheel drive transmissions. Like that's like my favorite Lexus transmission, other than the 10-speed like we see in the LC500. That's a nice SC430. You see these everywhere in Lexus land. Yeah, everywhere in Naples, Florida. The SC430, I feel like they're in a higher concentration here than anywhere else in the world. But I'm going to flip a UE here, and we need to test the performance of the RX. Now this is an F Sport, but this doesn't have the adaptive variable suspension. It is an available option here on the RX. I'm going to hit the brakes hard here, and yeah, the brakes are okay. They're not as good as, let's say, they are in the IS or the ES, but those are sedans, and it's progressive. Lexus brake pedals are always good. I just got out of the Subaru Ascent. I feel like those brakes are better than these brakes actually, but let's give it a little hammer down. Let's test this F Sport performance, which is the same horsepower and transmission as the normal F Sport, or the non-F Sport. Hammer down. It's decisive, it goes. I mean, still 295 horsepower, even though this vehicle has had roughly that much horsepower for over a decade. It still feels ample for this vehicle. Let's push the RX just a little bit around the turns. You can still have fun in this, even though it's not nearly as reassuring as something like the IS or the ES, but it is still plenty powerful and still enjoyable to drive, even when you push it. I've seen one of these things go around Sebring, just completely balls to the wall, and it was keeping up with older ISFs. You know, I know a big part of that is the driver, but still, in the right hands, this vehicle is still very capable. And I feel like this is a good opportunity to segue into what's coming next for the RX. So we're getting the new NX this fall, and I think that is going to give us some ideas of where the new RX is coming. The new RX, first and foremost, will have, gosh, it's so hard for me to be behind this Cadillac. Okay, I'm gonna stop here for a little bit because I can't drive that slow behind the Cadillac. Anyways, the new RX should take a page out of the NX's playbook. I expect this V6 to disappear. It's not gospel, that's just what I'm expecting. Replaced by the 2.4 liter turbo. It's going to have way better torque. It's going to have a new 8-speed transmission. It's going to have better all-wheel drive sophistication as well. It's also going to have the Lexus driving signature, which is essentially a badge of approval for every new Lexus on the Shimoyama test track in Japan. So it's going to handle a lot better than this vague numb steering RX. I mean, it handles okay for what it is. Even in this F Sport trim, or even with the adaptive variable suspension, it's not the most inspiring sport utility vehicle out there. All right, coast is clear, so let's get back on the road here. Now, electrification, we got to take a stab at here because that is a huge part of Lexus going forward in the entire industry. This, as we have it right now, has an RX 450h. It's had it, oh gosh, for, I don't know, 15 years, the 450h. We've had it for so long. And it's a great hybrid. It's not the most efficient though. And I actually prefer it over the V6 with 8-speed auto. It gets a little bit better gas mileage. Speaking of which, I'm getting 25 miles per gallon in this vehicle, mostly driving at 80 miles per hour. But yeah, the new Lexus RX will have two different hybrids, just like the NX. I'm expecting a 4-cylinder hybrid with 240 horsepower or so, and you'll be getting about 40 miles per gallon in it, maybe a little bit less. And then there's going to be the 450h Plus, which is going to be a 4-cylinder plug-in hybrid, and it's going to have about 300 horsepower and about 35 miles of plug-in range. It's the same powertrain that we see in the NX 450h Plus and the same powertrain we see in the RAV4 Prime. So that's not that exciting. I am holding out though for Lexus's next hybrid technology to come out on this RX, and that's what's called Direct 4, where you can have a lot more power going to the rear wheels than we currently see in any Toyota or Lexus hybrid. So it should have a lot more rear wheel driving mechanics, and it just feel a lot better with acceleration and through the turns as well. So, but other than that, the RX will get the 14-inch touchscreen, just like the new NX is getting. You'll have your choice of probably a turbo 4-cylinder, a hybrid 4-cylinder, a plug-in hybrid 4-cylinder, and maybe an F Sport Performance, not a full F car, but an F Sport Performance hybrid. I'm wishing, fingers crossed, coming for the next RX, and that should be debuting about a year from now. So where are we at with this 2021 RX and essentially the 2022 RX, because it's the exact same thing except a couple additional paint colors on the 2022 model. And don't forget, you can get a la carte fog lamps now in the 2022. Well, it's still going to sell like hotcakes regardless of what Lexus does to this vehicle. This feels a little bit old at this point in time, but it's still a very comfortable vehicle. It's still very smooth. It's like the ES that I drove last week. Handles worse, brakes worse. It's a little bit more versatile with the hatch, ground clearance, all-wheel drive. So it has that on the ES, but it seems it's always felt like the RX is just a raised ES with a lift back and all-wheel drive. That's what it always felt like to me, and it still feels like that to this day. But I can't wait to see all the new technology, all the new powertrains finally come to Lexus's #1 selling model, the RX, next year. We just got to see it in the NX first. But make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you are interested in Lexus. I've been talking about Lexus since the beginning of this channel. It's a big part of the luxurious fleet. Smash a like button for the Lexus RX, and if you enjoyed today's video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and as always, peace out.